Summer, 1916. In the north of France, the wide fields of the Somme, once peaceful for generations, were now transforming into one of the largest battlefields in human history. Here, the British and French armies prepared for what their generals called the decisive blow to break the German lines on the Western Front. Wind swept through ruined villages, carrying the smell of gunpowder from thousands of artillery guns being moved into position. Along the main road leading into the town of Albert, the British Army stretched for kilometers, supply wagons, 60-pounder guns, rifles, grenades, and most importantly, nearly 120,000 young soldiers. Many newly recruited. A documentary-style narration rises, soft yet solemn. By mid-1916, the First World War had dragged on for almost 2 years. Both sides were stuck in a deadly stalemate. The Battle of the Somme was expected to be the turning point. But no one could have foreseen that it would become the symbol of the horrific cost of modern warfare. Preparations for the assault began on June 24. From the hills west of the Somme, British artillery opened fire. More than 1,500 guns shook the skies, unleashing a quake that lasted 7 days and 7 nights. War correspondents recorded each explosion tearing the earth apart, leaving behind craters like open volcano mouths. British commanders believed the prolonged bombardment would destroy the German trenches, flatten barbed wire, and terrify the enemy. Campaign maps were drawn with near absolute confidence. The infantry only needed to walk across the fields and occupy abandoned positions. But underground, reality was entirely different. Reenactments show that the Germans had dug deep shelters 8 to 12 meters below ground. Reinforced with concrete, thick timber, and layered defenses, the 7-day barrage, though immense, mostly shattered the surface. Below, German troops remained combat-ready. In the camps, British soldiers, mostly workers, farmers, and teachers newly enlisted, wrote letters home. One letter is read aloud in a somber voice. "Dear Mother, the battle is coming soon. They say we only need to walk across the field to reach the German trenches. I feel scared, but everyone says this will be a quick victory." For many, those letters were the last story they ever told. At dawn on July 1, 1916, the sky was cold and gray. The first light touched the mist-covered fields of the Somme. From within their trenches, hundreds of thousands of soldiers awaited 0 hour in heavy silence. Recreated footage shows their eyes, tense, hopeful, and afraid. 7:30 a.m. The whistle blew. Trench doors opened. Long lines of soldiers climbed onto the surface. They did not run. They advanced in rows, burdened with heavy equipment, following the military doctrine of the time. Then, in a moment forever marked in history, the ground shook. From the opposite side, the Germans, untouched in their deep dugouts, rose to their machine gun positions. MG-08 guns opened fire. A cold narration follows. In the first 20 minutes, thousands of British soldiers fell. They fell before reaching the barbed wire, fell before understanding what had happened. Curtain after curtain of machine gun fire turned the fields into a scythe of death. Young soldiers, carrying the belief of victory, were cut down like dry grass under a storm of steel. The Battle of the Somme had begun, and in its first moments, it had already become an irreversible tragedy. By noon on July 1, the sky above the Somme looked nothing like the morning. The sun rose over a scene no longer belonging to the human world. Accounts from the time describe the fields as a catastrophe of metal and flesh. A vast plain covered with bodies, barbed wire, shell holes, shrapnel, and torn backpacks. The narrator speaks slowly, each word heavy as iron. July 1, 1916 was the bloodiest day in the history of the British Army. More than 57,000 casualties in a single morning. Military reports show that most soldiers were shot while trying to climb over barbed wire the British believed had been destroyed. But it hadn't. Hundreds of meters of wire remained intact. Soldiers were trapped on it, becoming perfect targets for German fire. Reenactments show medical teams crawling out to rescue the wounded, but each time a medic appeared, machine gun fire swept the ground, forcing them to lie still or die beside the men they tried to save. In sectors like Thiepval, Gommecourt, and Auvillers, whole battalions were wiped out. Survivors clung to shell craters for hours, unable to advance or retreat. A German officer's diary entry is read aloud. When the bombardment stopped, We heard footsteps, many, slow, then we saw them, advancing in lines. Walking into death, we could not believe it. Their shock was not cruelty, but disbelief at such outdated tactics. The Germans could not understand why the British sent tens of thousands marching directly into machine gun fire. Meanwhile, deep underground, German defenders were almost unharmed. Thick concrete shelters protected them from even the heaviest shells. When the British shifted to a creeping barrage for the infantry advance, the Germans simply climbed out and opened fire. This disparity decided the fate of tens of thousands in the opening minutes. In the days that followed, the Somme did not slow down. Instead, it expanded into a massive war of attrition lasting 4.5 months. Towns like Le Boisel, Fricourt, and Pozières became symbols of destruction. Villages centuries old were reduced to piles of rubble. Footage shows Delville Wood, where more than 7,000 South African soldiers fought to the last man in 6 days. Trees were shredded by artillery, leaving only blackened stumps like brutal bones. Mud and rain became a second enemy. Trenches flooded, mixed with blood and dead animals. Soldiers lived in the stench of death for weeks. Some were buried alive when walls collapsed. Others simply disappeared into the sucking mud. No place was safe. No day passed without casualties. The narrator concludes, "The Somme stopped being a battle. It became a giant mill, grinding down everything: men, hope, and even reason." By October, heavy rains turned the battlefield into thick mud. Artillery teams were stuck. Soldiers could barely move. Clothing, ammunition, supplies, all consumed by the mire. But the fighting continued. At Beaumont-Hamel, Canadian units advanced under nearly impossible conditions. Artillery support was inaccurate and ammunition low. Many soldiers were shot down just meters from their trenches. Yet they pushed forward in small groups until they captured the position in brutal hand-to-hand combat. The documentary narrator reads the commander's order: "By all means, Beaumont-Hamel must be taken." And they took it, at the cost of thousands of lives. In Pozières, Australian troops endured 42 days of non-stop bombardment. An Australian officer wrote, "No one can live in Pozières, and yet we lived in hell." By November, the British finally captured their deepest objectives of the campaign. But it was no victory, only a few kilometers of land gained, at the cost of more than 1 million casualties on both sides. On November 18, 1916, the Somme offensive ended. There were no victory parades, no cheering crowds, only a devastated landscape stretching from the Somme River to the northern ridges. The camera pans slowly across the fields, trees torn apart, earth gouged into craters. No signs of life remain. Words appear on screen. 1.100.000 casualties. 141 days of battle. 15 kilometers gained. No one could call that a victory. After the war, thousands of new graves appeared. The Thiepval Memorial, bearing the names of 72,000 soldiers missing with no known grave, became the symbol of the Somme, a place where many had no body left to bury. The documentary ends with a historian's words: "The Somme is the greatest and most painful lesson of modern warfare, that a single strategic miscalculation can destroy hundreds of thousands of lives." And the final narration echoes, deep and solemn. The Battle of the Somme is not merely a historical event. It is an eternal reminder of the value of peace.